safety pins are massive, except for this one. I'm just not going to pin this together. I'm just going to wing it and hope for the best. So, I have been thinking about relationships a lot lately. All kinds of relationships, not just romantic relationships. Relationships as in things that happen between two or more people. There's a bit of a really deep and horrific problem in most of my relationships, and I feel like this is a problem that a lot of the people watching this video have as well. Just realized I put this first stitch in the wrong place because I was trying to talk and sew at the same time. It's a problem of being surrounded by people, having friends and family and coworkers, lovers even, but not having a support system. I think there's a lot of reasons that this is so common. People work, people have disabilities, people don't really know how to provide support. There are genuine barriers to being a part of someone's hypothetical support system. But I think there's also a huge cultural component, and that is a societal aversion, or I would even say fear of commitment to care outside of romantic relationships. When you hear committed relationship, what someone is usually talking about is a romantic relationship. Even though commitments do form in other relationship models, they're not expected in other relationship models. And I think this is, not unexpected. It's Western individualism at its finest. There isn't any expectation that you will rely on your friends or your neighbors or your cousins or whatever, because you're expected to be able to meet all of your needs by yourself or with a romantic partner. And even with a romantic partner, there's a threshold of burden that you're not supposed to cross, or else you're taking advantage of them. I hope you can assume my perspective on this by looking at me, but I think that Western individualism is absolute bullshit. It doesn't even lead to more autonomy for people, because people who are hungry or in pain or stranded have their ability to act constrained by their circumstances. I know it's counterintuitive, but when we burden each other and when we take on each other's burdens, we become more free, because we're doing more labor, but we're also receiving more assistance. And I'm not talking out of my ass here. I do have some lived experience to back this up. I work with a mutual aid group. We do weekly meal shares, and there is a shit ton of work that goes into getting that ready. There's meal planning that goes on throughout the week. There's a lot of driving to transport ingredients. There's, of course, the actual labor we do at the meal share, serving people. It's a lot. But we're also direct beneficiaries of that labor. I have ADHD. I struggle with cooking, getting myself to cook, and also the physical process of cooking because of some coordination issues you can tell that I have. But because I participate in this organization, there's always a couple days during the week where I don't have to worry about feeding myself, because I can keep leftovers. I can warm them up and that'll be a meal. That, to me, is a form of freedom. And to get to a place where we all have this freedom for all things, not just food, there has to be a certain consistency in providing care for one another, and we really can't have consistency without commitment. Trying to tie off. So this seam doesn't look great. It's a bit warped, it's a bit buckled, but what matters is it's closed. Anyway, the whole commitment consistency thing, I think, gets to the root of like why I get so disturbed viscerally when I see mutual aid requests on social media, because it can't just be that I'm mad that people need help. It can't be that. I think it's that there's nothing mutual about just throwing a stranger a couple bucks one time. And I definitely don't mean to disparage any of the posters or the donors by pointing this out. I mean, unfortunately, crowdfunding is like a necessary practice in today's world and is probably the best use of social media compared to what some of us, not me though, obviously, but including me, what some of us are doing on here. I mean to point out that donating to a GoFundMe is fundamentally non-committal, and anything non-committal is fundamentally unsustainable. I think this is why so many crowdfunding campaigns end up dead in the water. No individual donors have an investment in them meeting their goals, just a passive hope that they will. Some might share once, but that's where the involvement ends. I spent the entirety of reading that line trying and failing to thread a needle. I'm gonna open up a GoFundMe where it's for like $20 for a needle threader for me. If anyone has tips on how to not completely fuck up while tying off a thread, I would love to hear them in the comments among your thoughts on mutual aid. So what can we do? How can we build systems of support rather than just instances of support? How can we make it so people aren't turning to ChatGPT when they're considering suicide? I'm laughing, but that's like most people who regularly use chatbots are using them to fulfill some sort of social need that's not being met in the real world. How do we avoid that? I don't have a single concrete answer to this question, which I think should be expected. I'm a leftist YouTuber, but I can share some of the steps I've been taking towards this goal within my own life. I know I spoke negatively of individualism earlier, and I don't want to make this out to be a one person can change the world thing. What I hope is that I can, through my example, also encourage the people in my community to think in novel ways about how they're showing up for people and how they're getting their needs met. And you people, strangely enough, are members of my community as well. So one thing on the emotional side I'm doing is letting go of the idea that I have nothing to offer. As I mentioned before, I am multiply neurodevelopmentally disabled. There are a lot of things that I can't do, but there's also a lot of things that I can do, and I need, when I'm addressing my own relationships, to keep that in mind. On the flip side, I'm also upskilling specifically for the purpose of helping people. Upskilling is like this term that exists in the corporate world for getting hired, but you can develop new skills for countless different reasons. I originally learned how to mend clothes just for myself, but it is really served people who know me. On that note, I am starting with deepening the relationships that I already have, seeing if I can provide help or ask for help, even in very small ways. I've started doing things that feel like intuitively just very strange to me, like checking in on people randomly over text, just shooting a text to someone I've never texted before but have interacted with before, asking them how they're doing. This might sound obvious to older people, but like Gen Z, we really don't do that except for very close friends and family members and romantic partners. I'm trying to be more regular and predictable with how I interact with people, building consistency into these relationships. There are some people I might text once a week, there are people I might call with monthly, there are various ways this might look, but what's changed is I'm committing to that explicitly and sticking to it. I am also kind of trying to seek new relationships and being selective with where and how these new relationships form. I'm trying to meet people in like organizing spaces or identity-based spaces where it is somewhat expected that aid will be provided, people who have similar values to mine. I'm trying to also commit to society itself. I feel like deconstructing my own individualism has meant taking a really harsh look at how I treat people who aren't close to me. I used to be the type of person, and I still somewhat am the type of person, to volunteer at a charity and then ignore someone who's panhandling on the street, and that's not right. I mean, I might not always have the ability to, what's the wording I used earlier, hand a stranger a couple bucks, but I might have the ability to at least give them the dignity of a conversation. And then the last thing I'll mention is journaling. Journaling is like a vital tool for introspection. I reached a lot of the conclusions I drew for this video through reading and journaling about what I was reading. I think I'm going to leave some journal prompts in the description, just inspired by what has come up in my journaling sessions on this topic. I'm also going to link the book Relationship Anarchy because this video was really inspired by it. Oh my god, it has gotten so dark. Should have put the shutter speed on auto. Well, it's too late for that now. Ugh. So, not the cleanest sewing job I've done, not the smoothest seam, but I'm hoping that it is at least sturdy enough for these pants to not require any more repair for another however many months or years this is going to be in use.